I am better.
It looks very different. Looks like a new style. You got a number. You got a 2 bus.
Between you, it's be careful what you ask for.
I'd say no, yeah. Or maybe it's not feeling guilty in the suit. Actually, we got a I said this this morning before I was really surprised at all. Don't worry about that. All right, it's not a question.
So
I'm going to
Either that or talk to my wife. I can't remember.
and I keep I
Because she was out here or whatever, girly. Process. There's a come down below.
Well, I don't. This is for you. I don't know what these are. I guess they're. No, I don't think they're for me. I think they're for the area
See how it goes and see what the back we can. So you're the captain of the ship? Yes. As long as the building doesn't.
That's it. Yeah, problem. Okay,
stuff in my purse.
Betsy Johnson, you know.
that's you.
I know. So tell me what this is.
It's for you when you're going to pieces. We're going to take just until you see it.
I'm not really doing a lot.
Oh, you're not doing a lot?
No.
Oh, I thought you were doing I thought you had an update or something you're going to give us.
Well, I'm going to do some on the budget, but hopefully it'll go really fast. This is really about the special ed presentation.
Oh, so we didn't know this. Oh, so now you realize where the camera is. Where it's going to be when it comes to stream. It's behind your back.
That is interesting. Yeah. That's what we learned about. That's what we learned about live streaming. They're going to be the major speaker. I mean, the major agenda item, really, the budget issue is really important. That's the major issue. So, thank you.
I always worry about that.
Cameras probably is.
Probably, but we can move that. Depends on who they're.
Well, I would put the camera over here like we're.
Well, yeah, but we're all wired up now because the way Travis wanted it to be. All right, let me ask him. All right. So Travis, update. The real main presentation.
Not for real. I think the camera's great right there.
Could, but I think we have to get the cameras over here. That way they can.
Focus right on these three gentlemen. I think that's perfect.
We're going off a one camera system. This is where Travis
It's just the least get it on the diagonal.
The only option is, so we didn't realize how wonderful it is that you are our main speaker. And they're trying this as something that they were to stream what it would be like from the back of the room. Well, of course, the back of the room is the back of you.
That's okay.
Yeah. Well, it's not for the audience. It's not okay. So we'll see what we can do. Because I want to see if they'd like to do this, and if they'd like to do this with one person.
Works for me.
Well, sometimes they used to do this. You guys tell me.
Yeah. Take a look at the side face. This good side.
We're going to show you flexibilities. You would play? No, we're going to try something a little different. If you and Nirlan, when you guys come up, would you come up and sit here? We're going to ignore this table. Okay. And Clay, you're on the speaker's agenda. If you come over here, that'd be great. Okay. So Nirlan and Andy, if you could just kind of squeeze up. Dean is sick tonight. She's not here. Come
On over to the good side.
I'll slide over this way to the good side. Hey.
You're on the agenda.
So we're going to slide.
But if you go to the live streaming,
Well, actually,
something other than the back of your head.
No problem.
Okay.
Yeah, my front is
I know. Right side or left side?
okay. So Nirlan's going over
We have students who are student.
Okay. Nina won't be here tonight, so she can watch from home. Here's her agenda. Okay, let's just, Ann, where's Ann? Where does this mic go to? Is this, you want to leave this where it is? Okay. You don't want to,
Well, we could.
for you.
Well, when we get to,
This is my television production background. I gotta tell, sometime I'll tell you the story.
He knows, yeah.
It goes back to my high school days. Yeah.
They had electronics?
No, really.
right there, it's gonna be.
Campus for Albany State. We used to go to the TV studio. There you go. Yeah.
That was a nice little office.
So this is like old cash.
Our student comes in, she's
Well, we'll squeeze her in.
to bring the chair over. I'm gonna get started.
Let's do it.
You all right?
Cammy, right?
You guys ready?
I think we've been live the whole time.
I will call this meeting to order and ask all those willing and able to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We will do introductions in just a moment, but I did want to mention to everyone that we are experimenting tonight with live streaming of our board meeting. This is a pilot project to see how well it works. So I encourage all those that are viewing us over the YouTube channel, if you have feedback for us, which we'd love to get, hit the Contact Us button on our website to give us information. And I do remind everyone on the rostrum here to turn on your microphones so that people can hear who you are. And welcome everyone. We will introduce ourselves. I'm Bob Cook, the board president. To my left is...
I'm Ken Green, your superintendent of schools.
George DeMarteau, attorney for the district.
Good evening, Sue Smith, board member.
Sammy Bannister, board member.
Good evening, Don McBride, board member.
Good evening, Pat McHugh, assistant superintendent for human resources.
Hi, Andy Whitmore, Assistant Superintendent for Finance and Operations.
Tim Schaefer, Director of Academic Services and Alternative Education.
Nellen Anselm, Assistant Superintendent of Student and Family Services.
Hi, Emma Straczynski, board member.
Hi, Jennifer Laird, board member.
Good evening, Karen Flanagan, school district clerk.
Good evening, Sean McCormick, board vice president. We'll start with the agenda review. I'm not aware of any additions to the agenda tonight. We do have one announcement. which
I
I'll
do.
turn over to the
Yeah, thank you.
superintendent.
I do. It is my pleasure to announce that our board member, Sue Smith, has received the honor of being recognized as this year's Henrietta Chamber of Commerce Community Service Award recipient. Sue will receive this award on May 8th at the annual luncheon, which schedule it on your calendars. We all want to participate. Many years of board service and PTA service, service in many different ways and shapes, and Henrietta Chamber wants to recognize you for those many years of service.
Thank you so much. I'm very surprised and humbled. Whoever was behind this, thank you.
Congratulations. At this time, we ordinarily would do our student representative report. She's not here, which will move us right to the public forum. And so far, we have one speaker signed up to speak, Mr. Clay Harris. You want to come forward?
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
How's everybody doing today? Good. It's been a little while since I came to address the board about a subject, and we have some new board members, and glad to see you. My name is Clay Harris, and I'm a Henrietta resident, and had children graduate from Henrietta. I have 3 went to college, and 1 is left in college. And I wanted to come to speak about our potential new superintendent. I know we've done a lot of groundwork, and interviews within the community and within administration. And I was on one of the committees that interviewed both candidates. And I also participated in the public forum after the selection committee meeting with the 2 candidates. And but I didn't get a chance to speak to the board. And you guys are going to be the actual decision makers. So I wanted to kind of share with you very specifically and personally my opinion. Hopefully you'll carry a little bit of influence or weight. And what I wanted to say is, out of both candidates, they were both very personable, very professional, had some good experience, and whittling down to the 2 candidates, I think you guys did a good job. They presented themselves well, but obviously one has to be chosen, and I think not just we all know here in Henrietta, but both candidates talk very specifically about our community, our diversity. It was very much communicated by both of them how important they got from the community, how important our community was about diversity, and how well diverse we are, more than many of the suburbs within Monroe County. And with that in mind, because of that, I wanted to share of what I thought was my deciding factor, because it's hard for any superintendent to follow the big footsteps of Dr. Kenneth Graham.
Well, thank you very much.
He has some huge shoes to be filled, and we were honored to have you for these almost 20 years. It's very unusual to have that stability, and there's a legacy that one of these gentlemen will have to follow, and it's going to be very difficult. And you and I have worked for a long time together, and we're going to miss you. Yeah, so, but with that in mind, the real deciding factor is a person who I thought had the most experience with a diverse staff and student population. And that was the gentleman from the city school district. I believe his name was Bo Wright. And I thought because of that, and the other gentleman, again, was very close, but him coming from a very small district and a very limited in terms of diversity, I thought that Mr. Bo Wright would lend better to what we offer in Henrietta. And the other part is the budget. It's going to be hard for a superintendent to match your prudence and fiscal responsibility along with the boards. But we do have Andy and we have Paula to educate them and to give them the Henrietta way so that we can maintain some very good fiscal responsibility. So with that in mind, that is my assessment personally, and I wanted to share it with you guys so that when you're in deliberation, if those are not some of the factors, which I'm sure it is, you heard it from me personally, and I'm sure you heard it also from a lot of the community and staff people too. So with that in mind, I'm done, and I do thank you for the time and allowing me. And I feel like a guinea pig today because we're being streamed live, so I guess I can go to Hollywood with you, Doc. All right, thank you guys. Have a great night.
Thank
Well, you got your kids on the West Coast too, you know. All right.
Thank you,
Take
Mr.
care.
Harris.
All right, thanks.
we appreciate your joining us and offering your opinion tonight. I would say that the board is weighing feedback from dozens and dozens, perhaps 100 people that have participated in this process, and it's a very difficult and very important decision. We've been working hard on it, and we're hopeful to make a decision in the very near future. So thank you, and we do appreciate your coming tonight. Moving ahead, let's go to our consent agenda, pardon me, for routine matters. I know we had a conversation with the superintendent about one particular item related to the treasurer's report and got feedback on that. Was that the board, all board members saw that? Any other questions about it? I thought it was very a good explanation of what the situation was with respect to the sales tax and how it's been accounted for. So I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda, moved by Jennifer, seconded by Sean. Any discussion on the consent agenda? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed, nay. Consent agenda is adopted. At this point, we will take a motion to approve the personnel actions, moved by Mrs. McBride, seconded by Jennifer. Any discussion on the personnel actions? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed, nay. Personnel actions are approved, which brings us to our workshop on the Healing Connection Partnership.
I'm going to turn this over to our Assistant Superintendent for Student and Family Services, Yolanda Song.
Thank you. The last time I was here, one of the things that the board wanted reassurance is that because you had not heard of the Healing Connection, you wanted to make sure that this was going to be a great partnership and one where whatever they promised that they would do, that we can make sure that they are able to follow through. So just a little bit of background on the Healing Connection. They first opened in 2010. And when they first opened, really the service that they focused on was supporting youngsters with eating disorder. We've known them in this community. They have supported some of our youngsters who struggle with that particular issue. But since then, they've also added other services, such as the behavioral services that we know many of our children, not only in this school district, but across Monroe County, are in need of, such as those students who are dealing with obsessive compulsive disorder, anger issues, sometimes family issues, and all of the trauma situations that we have talked about. So one of the agencies that you probably are much more familiar with, they are working with a multitude of districts. That's probably why you heard of them. So at first we reached out to them because we really believe that a partnership would be great as well, because other districts in Monroe County are doing that. When we reached out to them, because they are working with a multitude of districts, they are extremely busy, as you can imagine. And that's when they suggested that we contacted the Healing Connection. So we did that in January. We reached out to them, and at the same time, myself, Tim Schaefer, our colleagues from special ed, we all sat down and met and indicated what our needs were and what type of support they would be able to provide if we entered into this agreement. And it was similar to many of the support that other Monroe County schools and partnerships that they have had with other agencies. And so I'll let Tim chime in a little bit because he's also been involved very closely with the executive director and talking back and forth with him as well.
Yeah. Our main goal is to remove barriers. So take away those barriers that may make it difficult for families and students to access outside mental health support. And so by working in this partnership, we're able to provide a resource to our community, to our students, collaborate with mental health professionals, and really work to ensure the supports are there so our students can be successful and focused on that whole child in terms of being successful in the academic setting. Working in a smaller situation to start with provides us that opportunity to really get a better understanding of how the resources and supports that they can provide will work with our community and our students, so that then we can then examine how we may want to expand that service.
And so when they come to campus, the first thing we thought about is, because when we met with them in January and when we brought it to you, we knew that it was going to be March before we start this partnership if it was approved. And so for that reason, because a lot of times people can make promises to you, you want to make sure that what they are promising and also the relationship that we want to have with them will be there to begin with. So that's why we thought, because we're starting so late, it would be best to start at the alternative high school, where we have a population that is in need. Not that it couldn't be, the service couldn't be accessed by other schools, but we felt that it was better to start small and make sure we get it right. Because even with the referral, we got to talk about who's doing the referral. What does the process look like? When they do have concern about a student, how do they share information, even when there's confidentiality involved? And that's why we thought we could start it there at the alternative high school and make sure they truly are delivering the services that we really heard them say that they would be able to. And in addition, because they take care of youngsters between 12 years old or older, one of the concern or question that you had asked, Bob, is whether we can open this. This is not only for the alternative high school, but for also other students as well. We believe that if all of the procedures and processes that we will plan and have it in place for the rest of this year, if they're working well and the service we believe is up to par, we will open it up, obviously, to all of the other schools for youngsters who are 12 years old and older. What we also liked about the Healing Connection is because they first started with the eating disorder, they do have a doctor that can provide medication or prescribe medication if necessary. They have dietitian, they have other support system other than social workers and counselors, not only to do some of the group individual therapy or group work with the youngsters, but if they need it, it's kind of like it's all there. And the student doesn't have to go see another doctor to get that prescription. So.
Any questions? Go ahead.
So, how, do we anticipate that one or more representatives on Healing Connection would be at the alternative high school 5 days a week, all school hours, or would it be more an appointment type thing?
So that's part of the piece that we are still working the hours out. They would be housed in an office at the alternative high school. And then what they would look at is once they have those students and families that they're working with, they would have those hours that they would then be working with that individual and also be able to be in consultation with the district as long as the releases of information were in place so that we kept the confidentiality piece for the families as well.
They will expand to as many days as we want and as many hours as we want based on the number of referrals. So if they have 20 students to start with, it may look like it's 3 days a week, probably from 12 to 3:30. But if they have 40 to 50 students, we're talking about a different kind of configuration. But they are willing to do anything. Right now, we want to start small, but they also indicated to us that they are ready to do 5 days a week if we need it. And if we needed them to be here full-time, they can do that too. But again, because they're basing it on referrals and also the insurance, they want to make sure they have enough so that they can do what they need to do. I've also, I know in talking to Tim, I know that in anticipation, not only for our district, but there's another district that they are currently in conversation with to have that similar partnership. I believe that they added an additional,
So they have added an additional
personnel on their staff to be able to meet the needs.
Anyone else? I would just, this is not a question, but I would just add, by way of a comment, that I think, you know, the need for mental health services in this community, in our school community, is great and growing. I think it is wise that we start out, make sure that this is going to work, because it's so important that we be in a position to allow this to grow if it's the right collaboration. And if it isn't, that we find a different collaboration, because these are needs that are not going away and that are in many ways being unmet. So I think it's very important, and I'm delighted to see that we're getting started with this.
And we agree with you, and that's why the agency that recommended them, we trust the agency. And in addition, with the fact that the Healing Connection was already working with some of our youngsters, we have heard nothing but positive with some of the support that we knew that they were giving some of our youngsters outside of the school district. And so that's why we felt comfortable after meeting with them to bring the recommendation to you. In addition to that, as you know, one of the things that we were looking at is liability issues as well. because the only thing that they were asking of us is space and also access to internet so that they are able to do their billing and also do their work here. So we made sure that we put some language, George, with the support of George, to put some language in the memorandum of agreement. So they sent a copy of the memorandum of agreement to us. We sent it to George. George made sure that some of the language was appropriate and added some additional language to that. We sent it to the executive director. He was in compliance. He agreed. And so what you have in front of you is what they have agreed to and also what our attorney has suggested.
Okay, very good. Then at this time, I will accept a motion to approve the memorandum of agreement between the district and the Healing Connection. Moved by Sue, seconded by Diane. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed, nay. That is approved. Thank you very much. That brings us to our workshop on the biennial special education plan.
Okay, I'm going to turn this again over to our Assistant Superintendent for Student and Family Services, London Saul.
Well, I am happy to turn this one to my colleagues in special ed. First of all, I'd like to introduce my Director of Special Ed, or our Director of Special Ed, Jessica Bailey, who's going to also introduce our coordinators who will be here with her at the table to present to you.
Sure, so joining me is Jennifer Cardinelli, our elementary coordinator, and David Pat, our secondary coordinator.
Welcome.
All right. So I believe you received all of our packets in your packet. And so we wanted to start with the biennial plan. This was a plan that was previously required by Part 200s. And it really outlines our process for evaluation, right from evaluation to classification, and how we proceed through that. It's very comprehensive, and we updated the information that was in there. We wanted to make sure that what was in here was current and accurate. Part of the initial part of the CPSE that's run by the county, but we oversee that. So even though we don't pay for that, we oversee that, and we really work to ensure that our students are getting the best initial contacts that they can get, so when they are coming to us in kindergarten, they are as prepared as they can be and have the resources that they can get prior to becoming school age. And Jen, along with Sarah Liberty, our CPSE coordinator, run the vast majority of those, and do a great job at ensuring that our youngest students are getting the services that they need. You likely heard this summer about some of the programs in the area closing. Those were a big impact for us and were a big hit for us, but our office did an amazing job at filling in those gaps and ensuring that our students were honestly the first met. We were ahead of the game, and we stayed ahead of that game to make sure that our students were being met. So through here you can see the different services that are provided. I won't go through all of them. I'm sure you are familiar with most of them. And then as the students come from CPSE to school age, there are slight changes from CPSE, what allows them to receive services versus school age students. And so we meet on all four-year-olds to go 5-year-olds to ensure that they continue to meet the criteria for school age. Some of them will continue to get what are called building level services. So those are not through IEP, and those are not mandated, but we try to provide those where we can. You can see the breakdown of our preschool students. And again, it's really the qualifications for a preschooler with a disability are much easier than a school-age child. So then as kids come into the school age, we have been working really hard at making sure that the process is cleaned up to ensure that kids are getting the services when they need them and not doing that wait to fail model. So making sure that at each level they're really doing some great data collection, putting in some great interventions, and ensuring that kids are growing. And as long as kids are growing and closing that gap, they could continue to receive those building level services. If that gap is closing, they really shouldn't be coming to special education because they are getting what they need. It's when they're not closing that gap that we have to really start analyzing what are we doing, how can we provide them the supports to give them equal access to the curriculum in the least restrictive environment. And so ensuring that all kids are able to meet the end criteria for whatever that is, meeting the standards, getting a diploma. I will tell you that our philosophy is that every child that walks through our doors will graduate with a Regents diploma with their cohort. And that is the mission of our department as we go forward. So we are really working to streamline the referral process to make sure that it's consistent across buildings and across grade levels, to ensure that really shouldn't matter which building students go to, that they have the same access and the same experience. Every 3 years, we have to reevaluate students to ensure that they continue to qualify. I will tell you that Rush-Henrietta does a phenomenal job of declassifying kids, which is not the case across the county. Our classification rate is the lowest in Monroe County. And we are, I think, very thorough in ensuring that kids are getting what they need prior to the IEP and getting what they need to really talk about how do we increase their independence and continue moving them so that they can move on without an IEP. That is the goal. Even if they have an IEP, how do we get them off? We task our teachers every year with pick one thing that you can pull off of that IEP and work really hard at making sure that that's something that we're working on. When we've talked to parents, how do we increase your child's independence? They don't get a one-to-one when they go to Wegmans. So how do we provide that for them so that they can go into the world and be independent citizens? We review our IEPs every year to ensure that we are providing what is recommended on those and making sure that we are providing what is necessary. A lot of times students, as IEPs go, they just keep rolling and things aren't really taking off. So we're really having conversations about what is it that you want this child to be doing a year from now, and really cognizant of if you are looking to decrease that service for June, what does that look like? And making sure that they're explaining that process to parents, to the student. As I've met with staff, I've really encouraged them to involve students in their goal setting process because students have to own their learning. And if they aren't a part of that, then they don't know what they're working toward or why they're working toward that. So every 3 years we do that evaluation and making sure that they continue to qualify. And that really is the time that we can declassify a student or change programs. Currently, there are quite a few people running some CSE meetings and we're working to streamline that so that we are developing consistent IEPs, again, across the district. Our continuum of services, Rush-Henrietta does a great job of servicing some of our neediest students. Again, when I met with Dr. Graham, we talked about how some of the students that we provide services to in district would be in outside settings in other districts. So we do a great job of servicing some of our neediest students. That being said, we have some holes in our continuum, and we were able to, I know you got the mid-year audit reports, and part of the survey that we conducted really opened up some holes in the continuum. And so we want to make sure that the continuum is full at every level and that students have access to the least restrictive environment as they go through. And then obviously looking at out-of-district placements. I know there was a question about our out-of-district students. I can tell you that the school report card has changed, and so they don't pull out the special ed information separately anymore. And we've contacted the region and the state, and they will not share information from other districts, but they were willing to tell us that we were #1 in our out-of-district placements for Monroe County at Monroe 1 and #2 at Monroe 2. And our out-of-district rate is about 19%, which for me is unacceptable, and we will continue to work on that as we go forward, looking at, right now, 1 in 5 of our students is placed out of district, and we really need to look at what are they providing our students outside of district that we cannot provide in. And if we can do the job here, which I'm pretty sure we can do, and not only do, but do it better, what does that look like? How do we pull those kids back in and provide them with a better service than what they're getting outside of their own community? And I feel very strongly about that, and that's where my passion will come out. But I also want to make sure that if we do bring students back, that it's effective and a positive, and that we set it up for success, not just to bring students home. We also provide extended school year. Right now, we are working with BOCES on providing that. We've been having conversations about, is that the most efficient manner in which to provide those extended services? Are there, again, things that we can be doing within our district to support our students more effectively and more efficiently? So our numbers have definitely increased. Since 2013, our students with disabilities was at 524. This year, we are at 608, so that's an increase of 84 students over that time, which is pretty significant. We went from 9.21% to 10.99%. And again, we are still the lowest in Monroe County. But there, in that same time, and you heard the mental health piece before this, there has been a 35% increase in mental health referrals just in Monroe County alone. So we are grappling with some of those pieces. The hard part is that mental health doesn't necessarily fall under special ed, so we're trying to kind of keep going through what qualifies as a student with a disability versus a typical child with some mental health issues, and how do we navigate through that and put in systems for all students to be successful, whether they have that disability or not.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to clarify something
Sure.
you just said, because I just want to make sure I understood it. The state of New York is telling us we have the highest out-of-district placement,
Yes.
yet we have the lowest special education classification.
Correct.
In Monroe County. Can you
Correct.
just talk a little bit about
Absolutely.
this? It seems
So
like
there
two
are
different ends of the continuum.
There it is, and it's staggering when you have that information. And so we have been looking into that. What is about that? There are some factors that that play into that. One of those are group homes. There are some group homes within Rush-Henrietta School District, so that does impact our student needs. Some of the students that are in those homes are a needier population. They are often students that come from other districts to that home, so that also, while it increases our number, it decreases their number. I just lost my train of thought. We also, I think the process that Rush-Henrietta goes through, like I said, for declassification, I have to say the kids that are classified here are generally appropriately classified. And districts that send us students, sometimes we get the IEP, we'll do the evaluation, and we are wondering why they have an IEP. So that tells us that we are really looking through that more effectively than some area schools that are allowing students to continue to move up through the process.
Does parentally plays a factor as well?
They are, but they are not. So the buildings that we have within the district, such as Holy Childhood, Norman Howard, right now there are parentally placed students, but they do factor in a little differently. But we are in charge of overseeing those IEPs. So even though a student may come from a neighboring community, we have to oversee their IEP and ensure that they're getting the services that they require.
Thank you.
Yep. So our numbers did go up. When you really kind of pull apart the classifications, our students with autism, the number has increased from 83 to 125 over that time period. Learning disabilities has increased from 103 to 122. And other health impaired has increased from 93 to 134. And those are all in the charts that were also added. Those were kind of the numbers that stood out to me. And really, students with autism, certainly there's more awareness around students with autism. There is better diagnoses of students with autism. And our parents and the community are pushing for some more services for students with autism. Learning disabilities, again, I think some of that comes through that pre-referral process. And other health impaired is the OHI, and that is, we call it kind of your catch-all. So there are 13 categories under New York State that students can be classified, and other health impaired really is that catch-all. So students with ADHD can be there, students that have diabetes, that maybe that impacts their learning, they can fall under other health impaired. So there's a lot of different varieties of issues that will fall under other health impaired. So that's why you'll see that increase. You can see the breakdown of our students with disabilities. It's I would say that's pretty typical for any district going forward. So, So our budget, our budget for special ed over the last 5 years has increased about $3 million, and our BOCES budget alone has increased $2 million of that. So really, when you look at that, plus the number of students, the additional students that have been classified through that process, it's really quite staggering, and we're really trying to pull some of that out. Currently, in district, we serve 466 of our students, which is about 76% of our students. We have 3 that are homeschooled, 21 are the parentally placed that we have responsibility for, and 117 are in out of district. And I can tell you, we go to all of those meetings. We spend a lot of time out of district, and we are looking very diligently at those pieces. Any questions on the biennial report?
So I'm still trying to get my head around the numbers. And based on your answer to Dr. Graham's question, the fact that we have more students being placed out of district, if we did a less good job at providing building supports and declassifying students into building supports, our percentage would not look as high as it does now. So because we're doing a good job at the end, at the, if you will, less severely disabled students, our numbers look bad for sending students out of district because those are our more needy students that we can't provide the kinds of services in district.
The graduation rate is a really good visual example of that, because as students grow and we increase their independence and we declassify them, which we should be doing, that means that our high-flying special ed students come off of that roster. And so that at the end hurts us, because what it shows us is that our kids that need the most support to get to that finish line are getting there. They're just not getting there with their cohorts. So we're getting them there. And really it's the out of district that hurts us the most. and their graduation rates in particular. So what we're doing at our high school is great. Like, how do we get them there? We get them there. But when we declassify them, they come off of that. It decreases our pool of kids that are graduating. It's really, special ed's a great catch-22.
Right. It doesn't seem fair.
It doesn't, because we're doing what we need to be doing,
Right.
and we're getting kind of, pegged for it.
Right.
It's, special ed's fabulous.
So what you're saying is that it's not an aggregate number problem, it's a percentage problem, basically.
Absolutely. Every time we declassify a student, we hurt our chances of one more special ed student graduating with their cohort. But at the end of the day, what's best for kids is to graduate without an IEP, and that's where we are.
Well, I guess that's good to hear.
It's a good problem, it's one of those that, how do we fix it? It's a good problem, and we'll keep persevering and doing what's best for kids, because that's what we do. So, as we went through the mid-year audit, the audit is partially done, because we're only a little more than halfway through. So we're continuing to gather that information. We started really with a survey of our staff and administration on, what are we doing well, where are some places that we can improve, and how do we move forward. And again, really, that continuum of services that we provide, we noted had some holes, and that really came from staff. And so how do we service our students and help staff feel that they're doing the best they can do every day? We have some really hardworking staff, and they do really want what's best for their kids, and they work really hard at ensuring that all of our kids are successful. But we really wanted to provide some shifting of support. So for example, at the K-3 level, we had special class, and then we have consultant teacher, and there really was no bridge in between. So the students that their abilities fall in the middle of that were either not quite as successful as they could be in the consultant teacher model, or they needed additional adult support to be successful. And then we had kids that were in special class because they couldn't be successful in that not mainstream, in the general ed model. So we wanted to really work on filling that gap, and I met with Dr. Graham to talk about our vision and how we can move forward, and really making sure that our kids are leaving third grade and going to the next level, and then the next level better prepared, so that we can continue to declassify them.
So that our numbers can get worse.
That's right. But really about building that good, strong, solid foundation and giving them the skills that they need to be successful. So when we are looking at those students, we wanted to make sure that integrated co-teaching was an option, and that does allow students to have access to their general education peers. They have better role models, they have great conversations, and sometimes kids learn better from kids than they learn from adults. So making sure that we have that full continuum at that level. At 4-6, we felt that we will shift these kids as they go through that K-3 model and come through with a more solid foundation and continue to build that. Certainly making sure that our 4-6 kids are supported, and working to make those shifts as these kids come through. And then at 7-9, we felt that there were, it was really ripe for some change, and the staff really wanted to help kids better than what they were currently. And so we're looking at, again, shifting from that self-contained model to an opportunity for students to have their access to their general ed peers, and more support. Even though they'll be in larger classroom settings, the student to teacher ratio will be lower than it is now. So ensuring that they have better adult access throughout their day, and making sure that the case management piece is a stronger asset to them as a learning tool. And then again, at the senior high school level, making sure that we're preparing the next level for the shifts that are coming through to them. Any questions so far?
I have a question about your declassification.
Sure.
So you're gonna you want the children to be more in an ICOT setting, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So are there children who are still gonna need that 15-to-1 setting? Will that still be available for them?
So at different levels, there are still those special class settings. But what we're finding right now is the students, both in special class and in the consultant teacher, aren't making the progress that we would expect to see given the services and supports that they have at that point. At any point, all services on the continuum are considered for any student. So really diving into what is it that's best for those students, and shifting into, right now the students, for example, at one of our junior highs, the classroom is at 15. So instead of having 15 students with a special ed teacher, having 8 students with a special ed teacher and a general ed teacher along with their general ed peers.
Will they be, with that 15-to-1, they're comfortable, they're in the class, do you think they'll be overwhelmed in like a regular ICOT class?
No, I don't think that they will, because the other piece of that is the case manager or the special ed teacher is going to spend more time with those students. Right now, some of our special ed teachers are with their students 1 period a day, every other day, and they really don't know the whole child. This will allow them to be with the child for a good chunk of the day, and we are also adding some small group opportunities to work with the kids so that they are able to be the glue for them.
Is that like the learning lab that you stated in
Yes,
there?
yes.
So would the learning lab be just like a resource?
It's not really a resource room. We want it to be we want it to be flexible so that if a teacher is working on vocabulary and they know that there are general ed students that could benefit from that vocabulary instruction, that pre-teaching, they can also come into that group.
Who will be doing the teaching of the learning lab? Will it be a general ed or a regular ed teacher?
It could be either or. Right now, we are looking to have it be the special ed teacher so that they can continue to have that child, get to know that child. They'll have a better hold on what that child's strengths and weaknesses are and how to best support them throughout their day instead of just in one class.
Thank you.
Yeah. So there will be some shifts potentially when, eventually we would like to make sure that, again, that all 4 elementary schools continue to have special ed services, but really with the pulling in of the integrated co-teaching, there are some sparse numbers. So we are going to have to do some centralizing of services for a bit. And we've had some great conversations with families to say, we know this is potentially another move for you, but we want to, help you understand that this is the services that will be provided. And so far we've, again, have had great conversations with families. They understand and they know that as we continue to move forward that we are trying to provide the best services for their students. So there may be some different allocations of related services or like psychologists as we go through.
Now, if they're switching schools, what will the bus ride look like for that?
Yeah, we are already working with transportation. Currently some of the students are already on an hour, so we're making sure that it doesn't shift it in a ridiculous amount of time. But really, and our goal again is to have them in their neighborhood schools. So we're trying to navigate those pieces.
Would they won't be moving every year?
No.
When this, okay.
No.
That's a lot of transition first.
No, we want to make sure that, that students are able to have some consistency throughout their education.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So again, I'm trying to get an idea of
Sure.
scale. This seems like a whole lot of movement. But in terms of numbers, like in K-3, how many kids are we talking about moving into something different than they've been in? Are we talking about 10 or are we talking about 30?
So we have, there's 5 kids at Winslow that require special ed. And actually out of discussion today, 2 of them are going to go down to related service because using our data, we decided they don't really need a special ed teacher support. So again, we've had really, really good discussions. So there's 3 kids from Winslow that will be attending Fayal Elementary School to receive consultant teacher services because they truly need that special ed teacher support. We are opening ICT at Crane Elementary in the 4 grade bands. And we have a kind of a pod of 3 to 6 kids for each grade level. So that, there's a couple kids that are already at Crane that'll be coming out of the special class into that ICT model. That's the movement we want. And then there's, I would say about 8 to 10 kids that are currently in CT that need more teacher support, but they don't need that special class instruction. That'll be coming over from all 4 or all the other 3 elementary buildings. So it's not a ton of movement, believe it or not. And I think we've already been in conversation with transportation, so.
What about the children who come out of those small classes into a integrated co-teaching? What's your timeline? If they're not doing well, how do you reevaluate that? You're not going to wait until they're reevaluated, which is the following year.
No, we will continue to monitor at all points as we go through. And not only the student, but the staff too. We want to know what's working, what's not working. How can we continue to support you and your students and going forward in the best direction?
I think one of the questions the board member's getting at is what is the maximum class size that you're projecting for the integrated co-teaching classes?
At the K-3?
Yes.
So we have, I know there's a board policy for the amount of students in the small class initiative. And so we are looking to potentially, but we haven't actually had to. I think, Brian, we looked at numbers the other day and it doesn't actually push the number. But we talked about going to possibly 17 or 18 as we go forward.
17 or 18, how many of those will be special ed?
So we are looking at a third, and a third. So it would just be the 6. We're looking at 6, 5 to 6 for that number.
And just so you think through the math quickly, it makes it a very expensive model. So we're going to be looking very carefully at the benefit to the children.
And ICT and special class are in the same building, so that there is movement for kids if ICT is not successful, that they could return to special class if they came out of it, or for the special ed kids to have access to that ICT throughout the year when they are ready.
And again, we really want people to look at the child individually. So if a student is excelling or doing well in math, but really continuing to struggle with their reading, then let's look at their day a little more fluidly than they're in special class or they're in integrated co-teaching. They can do a little bit of shifting, or as they go forward, going into that mainstream class for places that they can feel successful.
I guess if I can just ask one quick question. I think the idea of expanding the continuum sounds like a good idea, providing additional services, but the question is, as the superintendent just implied a minute ago, it is a more expensive model. Have we already factored this into our budget plan for next year, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Which is why we're phasing, which is why the original recommendation was to go full district, and we decided that we'll go K-3 in junior high school. And we'll see how it works out, and we'll monitor it and let it gravitate to the intermediate level and to the high school level based on results.
And again, we're really looking at, are there students, and we do have students currently that we are looking to bring back to district, so there's that potential cost saving. And again, some of our students were in consultant teacher that just needed additional adult support, so this will allow them to have that adult support from a qualified, certified special ed teacher versus a teaching assistant or an aide, so that they can get good quality instruction.
Let me try to say that just in a different way.
Sure.
There are students that are in self-contained classes that are out of district that we think we could support in the district. There are children in our in-district classes that are self-contained that we think could be served in integrated co-teaching. So the idea is if we can pull the kids into the less restrictive environment with the integrated co-teaching, that opens up the slots to bring the kids out of the more restrictive settings from the out-of-district placements. That's what the whole model is. And from a financial perspective, when we bring the kids from the out-of-district placements, we're talking about $120,000, $130,000 a kid. So it creates a pool of funds that allows us to invest in the total model. And And that's what we're really going to be looking at over the next couple of years. We obviously want to make first and foremost assure that the kids all get the services that they need to be successful. But our rule of thumb is if we can do it with the same quality or better quality at the same or less cost, then that is our ethical obligation. And that's what we believe we're doing.
Simeon?
Just had a bigger question as much as anything, which was very comprehensive. The one thing I noticed that wasn't there was kind of some of the demographic data, and I don't know if this is the right venue for it. But I was particularly curious around the 23% or so of students that are learning disability, emotional disturbance students, gender, racial background, and all that kind of stuff. And then also in terms of students that are being classified IEP, again, particularly racial background, and whether that's a preponderance of, you know.
We have started to collect that data. I haven't, as part of the mid-year results, we pulled that information. There wasn't anything that jumped out at us initially, but we are continuing to look at that and look at the classification rate for all demographics, really. Because I think what you would see is our students that are coming from low socioeconomic homes are where you see more classification.
Interesting to look at. Is it possible to integrate, like the next time this kind of report is presented, is it possible to integrate that they're not going to be collecting it?
Yeah. Right. In the past, there has been an issue with disproportionality for Rush-Henrietta. Right now, we are not on the radar for that. We are. They are watching very closely, though, our least restrictive environment.
Sure. Yeah. It would be really interesting to see both, the aforementioned gender race, but then also, like I said, for free reduced lunch or whatever other kind of economic indicators.
Yep.
Are available as well.
Does that complete our report?
Sure does.
All right. Then I would accept a motion to approve the biennial special education plan. Moved by Diane, seconded by Sean. Any discussion about the plan? Further discussion about the plan? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, nay? The plan is adopted.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
This brings us to our workshop on the recommended budget and propositions.
Okay, I'm going to turn this over to our Assistant Superintendent for Business, Andy Whitmore, to walk us through the different components.
All right. Tonight really is the culmination of a long period of work. This is the final superintendent's recommended budget that is being presented to you tonight. If you remember, it started last September when we did a long-range financial forecast. And then throughout the fall, the superintendent works with the administrators and going through to develop a rollover budget. What will it cost to provide the same level of program and services? And that was presented to the board in December as part of the program and service review. And from there, we take the information we're receiving from the governor's budget, from a lot of the stakeholder groups, and of course, the Board of Education as we've been working along it. So tonight is putting all that feedback together into the final recommended budget. I'll start with the revenue budget because this is how we fund the expenditure side. So if you look at it, our final revenue budget of $127 million is up $2.3 million or about 1.9% from the prior year. The components, state aid is about a quarter of our revenue budget, so we rely on the state for about 25% of our revenue to support it. We actually, it looks like a 1% decrease year over year, but within that, our foundation aid is up 1.9%, and that's the general aid that the state gives us for the board to determine how to spend. And then a lot of our other revenue is cost reimbursement. Depending on the district's need, the state will provide a reimbursement rate for expense-driven aids. And that's where we're seeing a lot of increase this year.
For our biggest single increase was high cost, excess cost aid, and you just heard the presentation where our number of kids who are classified has jumped up and our expenses jumped up, but that also results in increased aid. Unfortunately, the aid's only covers about a third of the increase, but it's certainly helpful. So our state aid is showing as a -1% year over year, a decrease, but within that, we're up 1.9% in foundation aid. In total, except for the full day K transition aid, which was 1 year only this year, if you pull out that 1.6 million, we're actually up 3.6% year over year. So some of the expenses, the big expense drivers we had drove increases in state aid. The other biggies were transportation. As we did the reconfiguration, we added some transportation resources, so aid there grew 7.8%. And our building aid, because of the full day K building project, is going up 6.7%. But then we lost the $1.6 million of one-time transition aid, but that helped. We had a number of expenses on the expense side. Those go away next year, and that aid that funded them goes away. Going down from that, our biggest single category is property taxes. About 2% of our revenue, or 2/3 of our revenue, is funded through property taxes. We're staying under the tax cap this year. You can see that our real property taxes and the STAR reimbursement, those two together combined make our tax levy. Our tax levy was up about 3%, so it's the 2% we're allowed with CPI, plus the remainder is growth from new building in the district. But then we added another 0.5% to reflect the transition from pilots to the levy. Our pilots are down $400,000, and that's a result of our biggest single taxpayer, Marketplace Mall. Like malls across the country, they're facing declining sales with increased competition from online sales. So the value of that pilot, we're estimating to be down about $400,000. That is being realigned to the levy. However, the commitment to the taxpayers, as you'll see later on, is the tax rate will still remain under 2%.
Andy, just why is our STAR reimbursement down $1 million?
A couple of years ago, the state changed STAR reimbursement. Typically, every homeowner for the first $30,000, the state paid that share. Now, anybody who bought a home after a couple of years ago, they pay the school district directly, and then they'll receive a reimbursement from the state. The first year, we weren't sure the impact, so we didn't adjust our numbers. Now we understand the impact. So it reflects a lot of new houses. As houses turn over, the new homeowner has to pay us, so the state reimburses us less, but they'll send a check directly to the homeowner.
Okay, and our property tax number will go up correspondingly, in effect, right, if they're paying us?
Correct, correct. Yes, exactly. And then if you flip the page, the remainder of it is our other revenue, which isn't a significant amount of revenue. Bottom line, it's down about $575,000. That really reflects an accounting adjustment. There's one line item that says retiree health insurance. Retirees pay a portion of their health insurance, and traditionally we recorded that as revenue. We would pay the full insurance premium. Their share we record as revenue. Our auditors have asked us to change the accounting and basically net the expense down. So what we did, we reduced the revenue by $600,000, but on the expense side of the budget for health insurance, that'll be down $600,000 as well. So in total, that's a wash. When we also have appropriated fund balance of $2.8 million, and we traditionally have that every year. Our budget is an estimate. We typically have a little bit left over, so we take that's left over from the prior year and carry it over to the next year, so we don't have to levy taxes to cover that. That's $2.8 million. But when we were done with our expenditure side, we were still short $1 million, and that's going to be covered by reserves. So you'll see the new addition this year of $1 million for reserves, and that is to close the budget gap between the revenues and expenditures. So to
preserve our programs and services, we're tapping a little bit into our reserve funds. So between the reserves and the appropriated fund balance, that's about 3% of our total budget, which is really one time, it's from our savings account. 3% is not unmanageable, but we do need to keep an eye on that going forward to make sure it doesn't grow significantly. So bottom line, we're up $2.3 million, or about 1.9%. And as you'll see in a minute, that equals the growth in our expenditure side as well, because revenues have to equal expenditures. So any questions on the revenue side?
Andy, the legislature is in the process of trying to come up with a final budget. Just today, the Assembly put out their on-house budget, is that what it's called? Thank you. I always look to Bob for the right language. That proposed a more...
Very generous.
Very generous, right.
Tripling foundation.
Yeah, which is not likely to trickle down.
No, not
but,
likely to happen.
yeah, right. But nevertheless, I do anticipate that there will be a little bit more state aid coming our way as this budget negotiation comes to a close. How will that be reflected in the revenue budget?
What we'll do is, and you're correct, usually the governor comes in a little bit low when the legislature gets involved. The state aid tends to increase a bit. What our recommendation will be to the board at that point is to reduce our use of reserves. So we'll increase our state aid, reduce our reserves, so we're not relying on our savings.
Just a follow-up question. Again, it's something that may not occur, but the Assembly also proposed allowing districts to create a TRS reserve. Would that be of any benefit to us? I mean, initially, we'd have to fund it, right? So we'd need money to fund it, but long-term, is that something that would be beneficial?
It would definitely be significantly beneficial. Pension costs have swung greatly over the last decade. 7 or 8 years, 8 or 9 years ago, the schools paid almost nothing into the pension system to cover their employees. When the recession hit, those rates went up to 17%, so basically 17 cents of every dollar an employee earned, the school district had to contribute. So it fluctuates greatly, so a reserve would enable us when the rates are low, when the stock market is doing well, so the pension is funded by stock market returns rather than this employer school district contributions. When the rates are low, we can fund the reserve, and then when the rates peak, because inevitably the financial markets go up and down, we could tap into that reserve. So yeah, we're definitely a strong proponent and advocate for that reserve. We think long-term it would bring stability to our budget process.
Thank you.
Expenditure budget.
All right, so expenditure budget, you've been through many iterations of the expenditure, starting with the program and service review and all of the superintendent's budget status reports. But just to summarize, our expenditure budget is also $127 million, which is up $2.3 million or 1.9% year over year. If we did exclude the one-time full-day kindergarten costs that we embedded in the 17-18 budget that go away in 18-19, the budget increase would be about 2.9%. And then if we normalize for the $600,000 of retiree health insurance funding that we prior to this we did not include as an expense reduction, the budget is up 3.4%. So that's really all school districts are talking about structural deficits, and that's the difference you'll see. Under the tax cap, we're limited to about 3% revenue growth between the CPI and the new growth we get within the district, and our costs are about 3.4, 3.5%. So we're definitely, every year, we're looking at how can we tighten up on the budget. If you look at the components of the budget, instructional salaries, which are our teachers and administrators, $42.7 million, and our non-instructional salaries, which are all the classroom aides, the paras, our facilities folks who keep the buildings up, and our bus drivers, $15.3 million. And then you go down to the employee benefits that support them, the $32 million. Those total about $90 million of our budget, so about 71% of our budget. And if you look at the BOCES services, another $15.9 million. Most of that we're buying services, you just heard the special ed report, they're doing the same thing, they're providing the teachers, the aides. So most of that is also labor driven, which is about another 13% of our budget. So about 85% of our budget is people. We are a people business. We're there to serve the kids, and it's the people who do it. And then the remainders are the facilities that we have to provide, the equipment, the supplies and materials. But overall, a 1.9% budget increase. I won't go through the line item, I'll spare you from that since you've already been through it. And basically, this is the culmination. It started with the program and service review that you saw, all the iterations of you've given our input, we've gotten better estimates over the last few months, and people have come in with their feedback, the budget proposals, such as the new visitor management system we want to upgrade. Those things are incorporated into this budget, and it's 1.9%. So it's a very reasonable budget increase. Any questions on the expenditure side? I won't go through the detail. So what does that mean to our taxpayers? We're committed to a 1.92% tax rate increase, no more than a 1.92% tax rate increase. So for our homeowners, for $100,000 assessed value house, that's $26 per year. For a home assessed at $150,000, that's $45 per year. So we do think that is a reasonable rate of increase. One way we test that, a lot of our support for the school district comes from senior citizens. They don't have children in the district, but they're very supportive of the educational program. So we tried to understand the impact on our seniors. Our tax rate increase of 1.92% is a little bit under the Social Security COLA increase this year of 2%. So the good news is we don't think we're negatively impacting our senior citizens. And over a 10-year period, our average tax rate increase has been 0.7%, and the average Social Security COLA was 1.6%. So our district has been very financially responsible about staying within the means of our taxpayers who are supporting us. Any questions on the tax rate impact? And the next thing we do, we benchmark ourselves against the rest of Monroe County. We want to provide an excellent educational experience to our kids. It has to be affordable to the community. So we benchmark against all of the other suburban school districts in Monroe County. Our tax rate this year for 17-18 is $20.04, which is 18% below the average tax rate. It is the lowest tax rate in the county. It has been for probably decades, and it continues to be. We don't know what the other school districts are doing for 18-19, but we're very comfortable that our tax rate will continue to be the lowest in Monroe County.
Just as a fact, even with the projected increase in the track tax rate, it will still be less than last year's tax rate for the next lowest in the county. So we're assured that we'll continue to be
exactly
the lowest tax rate in Monroe County.
The other thing that's in the next document that's in your budget package is the summary of the superintendent's recommended budget. This will be covered at the community forum Thursday night when we invite the community to come in and look at the detail of the budget. So I won't go through it in detail tonight. Unless, would you like to talk to it, Dr.
I'll just ask, because you've had a chance to look at it. This will actually become the handout that the board would use during its presentations. You've had a chance to look at it. Were there any questions or suggestions? Basically, we're trying to highlight, budget highlights. It's an education. We believe it to be educationally sound. We believe it to be fiscally responsible. It's educationally sound because it keeps all of our current educational programs and services at their current level. And it also completes the one-to-one instructional technology initiative, which was the fifth year of the 5-year plan that was a major district priority over that period of time. It also reallocates funds to provide support for replacing our visitor management system to support our priority of school safety. So from being educationally sound, we believe this budget meets that criteria. It does eliminate the full-day kindergarten grant, but that's a wash, remember, because we received a grant and we had cost. They were the same, so it's more of an accounting adjustment. We do account for the pilot reduction for Marketplace Mall. We've accounted for that. And also, we have frozen discretionary spending. We're not diminishing discretionary spending, we're just not allowing it to increase. We're not adjusting it for inflation as a way to begin to kind of slow down our expense growth rate. And of course, utilizing the reserves to remain, keep our tax cap compliant. So those are the main points. After that, I think everything else is what we've talked about. So 1.92%, a 1.9 tax rate increase proposed. That will be under the cap, and it will also be less than the 2% that we were asked to stay within by our Budget Advisory Council. And the rest of this, I think, is explanatory, self-explanatory. Questions, comments?
Just one comment. I don't know what others think about this, but I wonder if it would not be beneficial in that, although this handout is going to be presented, everyone will be talking to it, some people are going to grab it and not really necessarily listen to a presentation. So I wonder if a little bit more explanation about the propositions would be in order, particularly the Good Shepherd purchase, because in isolation, without any explanatory material, it might be something that would strike people as unusual, and that it's going to be in addition to the budget when it really isn't.
Okay.
Maybe something similar that we did, was it last year, the year before, when we talked about the buses, what we were doing with the buses and the propane piece. Maybe something with a little detail to be able to.
Why it's an advantageous time to do that, how we're in a good position, how it isn't going to affect, right.
That's
some bullet points.
Yep, we can do that as part of the handout itself.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think
that one.
We have a page to give, so no
That's
problem.
what I
Exactly.
And I also think in the presentations that we've done, there has been interest in that bus piece, and I know we're not doing anything different than we've done on the bus piece, but people are interested in seeing, yes, we're gonna buy, 10 new propane buses, and it's as simple as that, but.
Yeah. Interestingly, when you look at our PowerPoint for the presentation, we have that information there.
Well, just slap it on.
Let's
That's
get
what
it
I'm
going.
hearing. All right, Andy, we have another page to give, so
Good.
we'll do a little expansion on Proposition 2, just to show how the purchase breaks down with different types of purchasing. And we'll put a little bit of text with the Good Shepherd, particularly talking about the relationship between the BOCES rental income and how that's paying for this.
And why that's a valuable piece of property.
How we'll use the
because it's
property.
adjacent to our property.
Okay, excellent. Yep, we can do that.
Great.
And the last thing within the budget is just the presentation schedule. So this is a preliminary schedule. Most of you will be presenting to the PTOs at the buildings that you're liaison with. And the superintendent always presents to the Rotary. They always find it interesting what's going on with the school district. So that's the conclusion of the budget. It's the superintendent's recommendation to the board. And unless you have changes as we go through the process, the only change we do anticipate is on the revenue side. As we talked about, we hope we'll get some incremental state aid so we can reduce the reserve usage.
So just as a follow-up on the community forum, the community forum is this Thursday, 7 o'clock, right here in this room at the Parker Administration Building. We'll go through the budget proposal in more detail, answer questions that our community residents may have. And in the handout that we use, we'll put a little bit more information about the bus purchase proposition in terms of the actual profile of buses that's being acquired through that proposition, and also some background information about the use of the Good Shepherd property, as well as how it's being acquired on a cost-neutral basis to the district.
Very good. And by way of a public service announcement, I neglected to mention again, as I was asked to do, that for those of you that are watching this on live stream, we really are anxious to find out what you think of this live streaming experience. We encourage you to hit the Contact Us button and provide us feedback on how the live streaming has worked, whether it's something that would be beneficial to use in the future. And with that, we will move into our workshop on district policy quarterly review.
Just one question
Sure.
first. Ken, do you have a schedule for the senior center presentation or not yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
Good question.
Would you like to come with me?
I usually do.
Okay.
I'm in town.
Okay, so in terms of our quarterly review, our voluminous review, George has provided a number of recommendations, which I think are all solid. I don't know if people have had a chance to look at them. We can either go through page by page and insert in his recommendations and those of anyone else, or we can agree that we will accept all of George's recommendations and only do any additional changes that people may have by exception. So let me pose the question this way. Do members of the board have any additional edits that they're concerned about that were not included in what our attorney George provided?
I just had one.
Oh.
I'm just trying to find it, sorry. I think it was.
We can why don't we just quickly go through then, because we don't want to miss anybody's. But, and I don't know if everyone did it, or did everyone have a chance to look at what George provided?
No, I haven't had a chance to.
You didn't? Okay, then we'll ask George to mention his when we go through too, or I can mention them.
Probably have a better summary.
All right, so let's start with policy 8100. George mentions in the 5th paragraph that begins with each and has 5 bullets. The second bullet should start with identify instead of select. Any other comments on 8100?
I think I also suggested in the second paragraph that the district, or the 1, 2, 3, 4th line, the sentence begins, the district will correct unsafe conditions immediately. I think I proposed that the district will immediately undertake to correct unsafe conditions.
Yes, yeah, I did see that.
The rationale being that you cannot necessarily correct something immediately, but you can start immediately to correct it.
Okay, I missed that one, sorry about that. Okay, very good. Anything else, anyone? 8100R.
I just had a question on that one. It says under the safety committee, all the people that should be on there. One's the director of athletics and one's student representatives. I've never seen the athletic director there, and it's gotta be impossible for kids to come because it's at noon during the week.
And what the director of student management does is has a separate meeting with the students at the senior high school. So he does meet with them to get their feedback, but it's separate so that their voices are heard as well. Yeah.
Bob, would 8100 be minor changes or?
I think 8100 is a minor change, just switching that one, those couple of words.
Just for clarification, George, are any of these comments substantive?
I don't recall any, it was mostly a
Yeah,
matter
any of
of.
them
Why don't we
substantive.
accept these just as technical changes and then go on to the board? Ask the board if they have substantive changes.
The only reason I was going through is because some people hadn't had a chance to review them, but that was the only reason.
I think there's a couple that he asked questions about that there was no decision
Right,
made for them to.
that's true.
Okay.
So, I would have preferred to do it the other way, but I don't
Give it
want
a
to
shot.
shortchange anybody. Good try. Okay, so
81, we're on
100R, correct.
I had made a note next to representatives too on the last bullet there. It says a representative from the Henrietta ambulance. That's not their title anymore. Do we want to leave it that way? Is Henrietta ambulance, or do we want to change it?
Change the name.
We should change the name.
And the name is?
CHS.
That's how,
H
whatever.
something.
I think it's CHS, but we'll get the proper name for that. But that's a good catch.
And then George's recommendations were in the very first line to revise it to say that, to drop out the words Board of Education authorizes that, so it would read, the District Safety Committee shall be comprised of the following representatives. Now, do we want to leave student representatives in as part of the committee, or are they that they're consulted with separately, or are they considered part of the committee?
They are part of the committee, but because of the nature of the fact that they can't leave the school building, we have to meet with them
Okay,
separately.
so we should leave them in there.
Yeah.
George's next comment was in the third paragraph that has bullets on it, that starts with the major functions, should read the major functions of the chair shall include oversight of. Anything else?
Can I just ask one more about that one too, just now that my thought was spoken. It says under the third bullet, under the same one, where the review of all accidents and incidents of loss. Like, is that something that we really, like, I don't think I've ever heard in the last year, any of those.
No, you're right. We can remove that.
That can be removed?
Should it be?
Who does the review of
Well,
accidents?
this one, it depends on what kind of accidents, because I think they're talking about the accidents with the adults. And really, no one reports on the accidents with the adult at the district safety committee, currently.
I don't, bus accidents?
Mm,
It does, I don't see.
They don't.
This is talking about adults only?
It says the review of all accidents or incidents of loss. I'm either thinking about any accident that happens with adults or even the transportation accidents, but those are not reported or reviewed by the committee.
So I would assume all accidents, so like if I fell down the steps or if a student was,
Right.
I would assume it was everything.
Or even at, when
Yeah, I
the
would
buses
think
have an
all of
accident,
Yeah.
but.
Make sure we're following our safety procedures with those.
Mhm. But they have procedures and processes in place, such as when a bus has an accident, there's a certain procedure you have to follow, but those are not reported or reviewed by the district committee.
Who does review those?
The transportation stuff? Or who does review those things? The transportation department, if there's an accident.
Yeah, it depends on
absolutely.
the area.
And
If it's transportation, if it's a bus, it's the transportation department. A lot of the worker safety or basically all employees are reviewed by the director of facilities because it could be icing, it could be a teacher slipping on ice, it could be a facilities employee who gets injured. So those are all reviewed by the facilities department, plus if there's any workers' comp cases, both I and the HR department review those.
And if it's a student, it depends on the nature of the accident. That is reviewed by the building, the nurses are involved, the nurse practitioner is involved in that process, so it all depends. And we keep a record of all of that.
Okay, so what policy governs how these different aspects of our organization review those? And where does that come from?
That's not a question that I can answer at this moment in time. I don't recall any policy around that.
Because it seems to me, at least my initial thought had been, that all these things are being reviewed by the district safety committee, regardless of whether they're being reviewed by some other administrative unit. It turns out, it sounds like that isn't what happens.
It would be a bit overwhelming. It would significantly increase the workload and focus of that committee.
Some of it is covered in policy 8111, Bob.
Okay.
But I don't know if that's
It's over.
exact on the city plan.
Right. That's what it says, yeah, right,
Under critical incidents. And the workers' comp is governed by state regulation.
So
Why
maybe
did
we,
I think that all of these things, including who's on the committee and what the committee does, was defined in the SAFE Act? I mean, I thought that was law, that these are the things your safety committee has to do. Am I confusing that with something else?
I think what we do they don't review it per se. There's different individuals in the committee who does different reports. For example, the facilities will report on facility stuff. Our nurse practitioner will report on, but the way it's stated is that we have to review these things. That is not the function of I would say the safety committee. Obviously, we do the report. There are individuals who are responsible for these functions, depending on which department it is, and they'll report out. That's why you have all of these individuals, but not necessarily reviewing them. Obviously, we keep records of all of these things, because if there is an accident, we have insurance, and sometimes parents will bring that stuff to our purview, and so we have to keep a record of all of these things that occur. But it's not the safety committee as a whole reviewing these incidents.
Right, well, this says that the chair of the committee reviews these things.
Right, we look at them holistically behind the scenes, but not necessarily it's reviewed by the committee. And again, depending on which department, all of these individuals will report out from their department point of view.
Right, and then we have the oversight of that, of the report, right? That, because this is oversight.
Well,
So what they're gonna, when the reports come out, they're gonna look at the reports and overlook those reports, make sure everything was done right.
The chairperson of the
Yeah.
committee, correct.
Right, but talking about, accidents and safety committee, shouldn't they be talking about like bus accidents? And
They
finding out
can.
what happened?
They can talk about those things, but what I'm saying to you is that in the past, it's just based on whatever the director is. The director have the opportunity to report these things. What I'm saying to you is that the committee as a whole, because it's a huge committee, they don't necessarily review each and every one of these accident reports. There are specific, go ahead.
I don't think that we thought that they did. And just in terms of the way this is written, it says the chair is doing that. I think maybe that resolves the confusion about it.
Okay.
I think. Everyone understand? All right, so at this point.
Deleting it or leaving it in then?
No, I think we leave it in. I mean, I don't.
It is done,
It's
not
done.
necessarily by the general committee.
Right, and this
It is-
doesn't say that the general
Right.
committee doesn't.
Correct.
The confusion was, it sounded like it was being recommended to take it out, so then who was ever going to look at it? Nobody was going to be reviewing accidents. And I think that's where the confusion came in. Okay, so again, I think these are minor changes, unless people feel otherwise. This doesn't have to come back. 8110, in the second paragraph, George recommended in the fourth line that begins with the second paragraph, fourth line that begins with structures, that the word should be shall. Anything else on 8110?
I thought that in the, under fire inspections, that paragraphs 3 and 4, I mean, the 4 doesn't really add anything to 3. The superintendent will prepare this report and any recommendations.
That's 8110R, I think.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We're not on R yet. We're just on 8110.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Any other comments in this
Yeah,
one?
can I make this one small, that's really silly, but
No, that's
where
good.
it says fireman under that same thing, it's firefighter, because there's many firewomen. Firefighter
Okay,
instead of
where
fireman.
is that?
It's right under that fire inspection
Last
paragraph.
sentence of the fire inspection.
Volunteer firefighters,
It says, and volunteer firemen, it should be volunteer firemen.
that makes sense.
My question was going to be is, a little bit of this policy shows up in the regulation, and so it feels redundant, so is it something we should have the policy committee look at and see if there's anything that needs to
Consolidate.
be collapsed? Because I started reading the regulation,
I
didn't
agree
I
that
just
there
read
was, I
that?
didn't want to get into the long explanation of the email, but I think there was a lot of redundancy between the policy and the regulation.
I thought so too.
Well, the policy reads like regulation to me, that's.
I agree. So let's send 8110 and the regulation, 8110R to policy to try to resolve that redundancy. And George had other comments in 8110R which may be resolved in the course of that, including statutory references. All right, 8111, any comments? Anyone?
I have a tab on it.
Yeah, but now I'm reading it and I don't know, yeah, never mind.
Okay. I mean, the only, actually, I did have one question, just in terms of criminal critical incidents. Should there be a reference to calling 911 in here?
Doesn't the wording to be reported to the Monroe County Sheriff's Department? I mean,
It isn't
You
necessarily the
mean
same
like
thing.
any incidents that result in the call to
And so
911?
Right.
Fine. I mean, that wouldn't be unreasonable. Broad.
Or even regulation,
Yeah, that's important.
No, it's in the policy on the second page.
that wouldn't belong, that would be a regulatory aspect of the policy.
Except you've got a list of types of activities that are definition or
This is the redundancy again, confusing policy with regulation.
I kind of thought that too, but
Well, right, let's send both this policy and its regulation to policy as well.
The 8111.
8111 and 8111 are it. All right, 8115. Anyone? I'm going to try to pick up the pace a little bit here. 8120. Eighty-one 20.2.
George had a question about number 8.
Yeah, and I had a question there as well. It's effectively the same question.
Is this about the chemical hygiene officer?
Right.
Committee.
Committee. Who, it says that you have to establish one if it's appropriate. How does that get decided? Is it appropriate, is it inappropriate? Should we just say you appoint one or you don't?
Have we ever?
We've never had.
We don't have-
We have an officer and they ensure compliance. We've never run across the need to.
And I wonder if we need something along the lines of including the assignment of responsibility as chemical hygiene officer or for the chemical hygiene plan to the director of science.
I wasn't clear what that
Something that
reference to the
explicit- I
assignment
think
was.
that's
It
what
just
they-
like
I
the
think that's
assignment,
what's
and
missing.
I wasn't sure how that related, so that's the second question I had about
Yeah.
that
Is that the
number.
board is designating a chemical hygiene officer?
I think this needs to go to policy also, to try to figure out exactly what we want to say. 8121. 8121.1.
I'm sorry, Nurlan, I think we should bring this to policy. Nurlan has some suggested language for the board to consider around the third bullet. There are state regs that allow the administration of epinephrine, Benadryl, like EpiPens and things like that. So that, she's proposed some language, I think, that probably should go to committee and consider.
It may require a change in policy and then a change in regulation as well, right, or the additional regulation. So we'll send 8121 to policy, 8121.1.
In the second paragraph, Nurlan is recommending that we change district physician to district nurse practitioner, right in that first line. And George, add one
And my comment on the third line was that, to make it read a little better, I thought the board also approves the district's participation in New York State Department of Health, rather than approve the district to participate. So instead of, so read, the board also approves the district's participation in a New York State Department of Health registry.
Do we need also, George, I thought you crossed also off.
Yeah, you knocked off also.
You just said the board
Board
approves the
approved,
district's.
Yeah, we really
Okay.
need also.
Okay.
And Sue?
Back to the second paragraph, in the second line, it refers to the school nurse teachers and the registered nurse, where in every other, in the last paragraph and in the regulation, it refers to registered nurses. So I would suggest deleting the and adding S in that second paragraph. So it reads, school nurse teachers and registered nurses. Right now, we may only have one, but sometimes we have two.
Minor or run it back?
I'm sorry, tell me again what you're saying. What are you changing?
Rather than have registered nurse, but
Instead
singular,
of
it
the
should be
registered
plural.
nurse, it will say, cross out the registered nurses.
Oh, I'm in the wrong sentence, that's right, sorry about that. Yep, that makes sense. Okay, I think all of that is minor as well, I would agree with that.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I was on the wrong sentence. 8121.1R. 8122. 8123. 8123R. 8123.1.
My comment on this was the fourth bullet.
It doesn't make
seem to fit in that discussion.
It doesn't make sense. I don't know how you include it in the exposure control plan, the route of exposure when you don't know there's an exposure.
That appears to be
Yeah.
that appears to be an after the fact investigation you would
Well, I think so, yeah.
rather than a plan in place to deal with things upcoming.
Right.
So I would just delete that bullet.
Well, I guess the only question I would have is, what does the CFR say? Are there regulations that, for some reason, it has that in there, even though it doesn't belong there?
I'll take a look. All right.
Before we delete it, can we check with the nurse practitioner? I rather,
Requirement for
Yeah.
documentation. The
That could
plan
be-
should include requirement for documentation of the route of exposure.
That
Well,
could be-
that would make sense. This is going to go to policy. I also wondered, it's going anyway, but in the last paragraph, it says that the board reviews and updates the exposure plan annually. Do we actually do that?
no.
I don't recall us doing that every year, but maybe we do.
We do.
We do?
We do. We have an exposure plan, you're not the one approving it or reviewing it annually. But it does say that you're
We're
supposed to review it,
yeah.
correct?
Okay, so we ought to fix that probably.
Put it on the
But
list.
we can discuss, this in policy, whether that's something that we have to do or can be done by somebody else. All right, 8123.1R. Anyone?
Minor
I
typo.
think it's George, I think it's my printer, because
Oh.
you will notice on the first page, it's got that as well, and I double checked it, and it's okay on the original.
Okay.
So it's gotta be my printer.
Sometimes
Yeah,
it's
there's a
copied.
space
Bolded,
issue.
these bolded things that are showing up in there.
It's
I
kind of
did
was
check,
distorted in the copier, actually.
right, because I checked my original, and they were okay.
There were a couple places where it kind of,
Yeah, I noticed that.
I saw that too. All right, 8123.1E, George recommends we change the title of the exhibit from contagious diseases to hepatitis B vaccine conditional waiver. I agree. Any dissent on that? All right, then we will consider that a routine
Minor?
change, that's minor. 8130. 8130R.
I have one, just the district safety team change to district safety committee.
Yep.
Is it? We just made that change to district safety team last year to avoid the confusion with the wellness committee.
No, it's district safety committee, health and wellness committee, emergency response team.
So it is committee in all our
Yeah.
policies? Okay.
Yeah,
So
and
ours
this is,
should be-
it is committee in all of the other ones.
Okay.
We just must have missed this one. All right, George recommended deleting the 1, 2, 3, the fourth paragraph because it's repeated on the following page, which makes sense. What's that? Right, to maintain security.
Minor as well?
Minor. No, it's minor.
Okay.
I was just looking at another note I have that decided not to worry about it. Okay. 8132, anyone? 8133, this is so exciting, isn't it?
The people watching this streaming must be,
Right.
I bet they're
This
hitting
is,
that
that's
button
what
all
I'm
the time
thinking, this has
right
got to
now.
be thrilling for all of our viewers. They've all clicked off by now, I'm sure. Okay.
Can you guys sum up for everybody watching?
So George recommended that we delete in the second paragraph misdemeanor of, because it is actually a question of felony.
I thought it should be or.
Well, that was my
misdemeanor or
first
felony.
comment, that was my first comment.
I thought you said strike misdemeanor of. Did I misunderstand?
Is it?
Is it misdemeanor?
So you recommend
Misdemeanor or?
just strike it.
I thought, I had it, at first I suggested putting an or in, but then I felt like, when I looked, everything seemed to be a felony level.
That's what I thought when I read it too.
Okay.
So that may result in a felony conviction?
Right, exactly.
Yep,
Minor as well.
And if someone-
You could hedge it by putting just criminal.
that's true.
In fact, why don't,
I think that is
just result
safer.
in a criminal conviction.
Otherwise, it sounds like we're plea bargaining in our own policy. Okay. 8133R,
Minor, Bob?
yeah, that's minor. 8133R, George was raising.
This is really not
I
a
thought
thing
that
about
was
the
interesting,
policy,
yeah.
but on the second page, about halfway down the bullet, it says, ensure that the school nurse brings blue emergency cards and or emergency card database. Maybe there is an alternative process to that, but it seemed to me that it's not a matter of policy, but a matter of practice, that there should be some central registry, because if you're relying on the nurse to be able to retrieve that information while everybody's leaving the school, that may not be, it seems prudent to have an alternative database for that.
Or it could be a situation where the nurse physically can't.
Well, that's what I'm thinking, yeah.
For some reason, if there's a fire in the nurse's office or something.
Or an active
Do we
shooter
have
kind of thing.
duplicates of the blue cards?
It's a suggestion about practice, not about the
Right,
policy
right,
itself.
I agree.
We have blue emergency cards, and also we can print the list of students and staff members.
Okay, so we do have access.
Either or.
So
And we
even
haven't.
if we don't get them from the school.
Correct, and we have an emergency black bag that we update the list of the students and staff that are there in their.
So this
So it's a
information is in the
carry-away.
black bag.
That too, correct.
So there is a.
So there's
That's
a,
right.
yeah, there's the blue
It's just a
cards, but then
file
there's
that
also
reads.
a.
It's in this
Okay.
black bag, it's the
Perfect.
emergency
Yeah,
bag.
So are we leaving policy alone?
Policy is fine the way it is, but Sue has a comment.
Well, one comment is database is one word, not two words. But in the two bullets before that, request buses to be sent to the shelter and or transport students. I think that's supposed to say, should be sent to shelter and or transport students. Sometimes we put students in buses to shelter.
Correct.
Yes.
Not to
Right.
the shelter.
You're
I think
right.
you're right.
Drop the and,
Yep.
and that's all minor as well. 8133E, the exhibit. 8134.
It's reflected in the 21st century. Sorry, I said it's reflected in the 21st century, and that we might want to add internet or website.
Website and Facebook.
Under the second paragraph, school closing and the late starting time to noise dismissal should be provided to local radio, television stations for public announcement.
Yeah.
I would actually go to the website first.
Oh, okay, website. Because by this, it says if no reports heard, you know.
That's the internet.
Yeah, the district.
Yeah, but, yeah.
All right, so what,
I think we have, don't we have like standard stock language that we use for, I can't remember what it is.
we
but like-
did, but it's not, this is not exactly the same case. So what I'm thinking, we could say, school closure, delayed start times, and early dismissal should be provided to local radio, television stations for public announcement, and to the district website and district social media. covers everything. Works for everybody? Okay. And I think that also is,
Sorry, public announcement, district website.
And social media.
and this district social media.
Yeah, post it.
Thank you.
I think it is something for, it's provided to local radio and television stations for public announcement
And provided.
or made available on district.
I would actually reverse that, saying early times should be noted on the district website and social media and provided to local radio and television stations.
Should be posted,
Posted or noted on the district website and social media.
I would say posted rather than noted, right? Posted on the district website and district social media.
As well as
And,
provided.
and provided.
Well, that you're getting at, I think might be better, communicated through district media.
Let's send this to policy because.
Well, the reason is, because the first thing we do is we do a robocall.
Right, yeah, well, that's
That's what
a
we
good
do.
point too. So robocalls,
But you don't want to list all that, because in 10 years, no one's going to know what that means.
no one's, exactly.
Policy.
They should be sent to a neural interface. We did in other policies.
Yeah, we're talking about email and stuff, electronic media.
Right.
Yeah, I think we could just be general, should be communicated through
So-
digital media.
And we're gonna send the policy to try to make the language
Travis, we need some boilerplate language.
I think we have it already. All right, 8130, that's great policy. 8135, anything? 8136. 8200. George had some bold letters, which may just be a copy.
Same thing, I checked it as well.
Okay. 8212. Going once, going twice. That completes our review of the district policy review for this quarter. And brings us to the superintendent's report.
No, actually, we have one other item.
Not yet.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's out of order. I have my stuff out of order, sorry. I have no written information items this evening. I see everyone is happy with that. Just a couple of very brief follow-up items. On March 1st, we had our Parent Leadership Forum. I thought it was well-attended, very productive. We did get some feedback regarding the parent survey, some interpretations. The feedback is now being summarized into a goals and objectives statement for DPAC's work next year, and I'll be bringing that to DPAC at the April 4th meeting for their adoption. So once it's adopted, I'll make it available to everyone. Also, on March 6th, we had our School Safety Forum, which I believe was well-attended. We had over 80 folks there. A lot of great questions, great comments. The Director of Student Management is now summarizing all of the information from the Safety Forum, in addition to a similar Safety Forum that was held at the senior high school on 2 occasions. That information is being folded in as well. What we're going to be doing is posting those recommendations and suggestions on the district website on a special page that we're creating called School Safety Protocols or School Safety, and it will be a singular place people can go to understand not only our district's commitment to school safety, but the role of the district safety committee, as well as the information about safety plans, the issues that people have asked the district safety committee to explore, and also a Q&A. Some parents after the forum asked us to set up a question and answer capacity on that website, similar to what we did with school reconfiguration, so people can enter questions right on that page and then have the answers appear there as well. There'll also be links, of course, to the video that we made of the Safety Parent Forum, which, by the way, was posted this afternoon. So will be, in fact, it was advertised. We sent out an email today letting folks know who couldn't attend that if they want to experience the Safety Forum from last week, they could do that through the YouTube. So we're very pleased with that.
Was the student one also posted?
No.
Okay.
That was not videotaped.
Oh, okay.
I don't think we were
Yeah,
there.
the first week it was, when they had the procedures and such. No one's positive.
I'll look into it. I don't
Okay.
recall who was taping it.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
I just thought I remembered that it was taped.
It wasn't being taped by us. So, I'm sure it was being taped, but I don't think it was us. Yeah, we'll look into it. That's it, unless you have anything else.
Anyone? Okay. New business is a recommendation to change our quarterly policy review cycle to a 3 times a year cycle. Triennial.
What about every 3 years?
Yeah, that's why I didn't want to say triennial, but I was trying to trip on my tongue there. I assume people have had a chance to take a look at this, and I would accept a motion to approve the recommendations to move to 3 times a year. Moved by Diane, seconded by Sean. Any discussion about it?
As long as we continue reviewing policy, that's all that matters.
I think there's legitimate reasons for changing it because the fourth quarter isn't ever occurring until the following fall, and so it's really not working the last few years.
It's going to be the same review. Over 3 years, the board members will cover the entire policy manual, but instead of doing 16 sessions, you'll do 12. So we'll just consolidate, break it up into 12 packages rather than 16 over that period of time.
And if Sue weren't leaving, we wouldn't even consider this.
No, I was concerned that you were considering going to a 4-year cycle versus a 3-year cycle, and I was pleased to see that that was not the case. I do think it could have been brought up in policy first, but I'm fine with it.
Okay. Any further discussion about it? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, nay? Okay. Board member reports, beginning with Labor Relations Committee.
Actually, the Labor Relation Committee was probably the best one we've had all year. We did negotiations and what to expect, what to do, who to try and get to help you out from the state, or Lawrence there. But it actually, the notes, if I haven't put them out, I will make sure they get out to everyone, the minutes from the meeting. It was very informative. I have the pamphlets too, but it'd be nice if everyone could have been there, especially since as we're entering potential negotiations going on. But it was very, Andy and Pat were there, so they got to sit and see it as well. But it was very good. They really took the issues on and ran through a lot of information in a short time. So.
Very good. The Menokai School Board Association Executive Committee, the biggest thing on the agenda was a discussion about the renewal of the executive director's contract, the annual renewal. And Ken, I don't know if you remember anything else. That's the
I don't.
all I remember.
Brockport sharing a lot of information about their study of school resource officers, which was not an agenda item, but came up anyway.
Which was not, right.
Yeah.
Right. That's a good point. All right, so that's really what happened there. District Wellness Council.
Sue was kind enough to cover that for me.
That's right.
Yeah, the minute, Anne Marie sent the minutes out yesterday, and they're quite thorough. Items of note, flu season is leveling off, and it didn't sound like we were terribly badly hit through the season, so under control. There are 3 5K opportunities coming up for fundraising that will benefit Henrietta area charities and ventures. 2 interesting presentations from Barb Christensen from the Community Anti-Drug Task Force regarding vaping and how prevalent that's becoming and how much of a health hazard it is proving to be, as well as CBD products that are available over the counter or without prescription, but are probably not as effective, can't be verified as being effective like products that you get from a dispensary, and often, and could be proven harmful, so something that parents should be aware of that's out there. CBD is one of the components of marijuana that isn't the non-dispensary products can be not safe. So those were interesting, and the minutes are thorough, and there's some handouts related to all of those things attached.
Very good, thank you. District Parent Advisory Council.
I have nothing to add what Ken mentioned about the leadership forum.
Okay. The Albany Advocacy Trip, 3 of us went on that. I thought it was a very productive trip. This year, the Menokai School Board Association changed the timing of the trip to make it a Monday afternoon to Tuesday afternoon trip instead of a Monday morning to Tuesday noonish trip. I think that was a good change. We were able to meet with more legislators at times when they're actually there, and communicated our concerns about the state budget. We were there in advance of the one-house budgets, which was important, I think. A number of both our assembly member and our senators indicated things that we brought up will be taken to their conference as they discuss the education budget. There were things that people hadn't thought about, so I think that was good. I don't know if Sean or Ken would like to add anything.
I'll just add, they were, in each of our meetings, they were very responsive to the conversations that we had Rush-Henrietta to our legislators. They were very upfront about giving us kind of status reports on how they had followed up on some of the things we had requested. And I found it to be very productive. I think the relationships we're building in terms of having their ear and their recognition that it's important to lend their support to us is really coming to fruition.
I thought what was good about it was, we were down there Monday, we had a meeting where we had people come over and talk to us about, the issues, and then we also met with what position was he? With the superintendents.
Yeah, Superintendent Bob Lowery.
Yeah, Bob Lowery. So you didn't have to worry about going in not knowing what we were going to talk about. They're very well prepared, but that also helped, and we talked about some issues and such at the time. So I thought that was very helpful.
Did you get a sense that there will be a budget passed by April 1?
There is a difference of opinion about that.
I think the consensus was no, but soon. It's because of the Jewish holidays that are coming up, and it's very unlikely they'll get it done before that holiday period. That's what was my interpretation of what they were telling us.
Right, yeah, the sort of the Easter recess, and, because of the timing of it, could be an issue. I think it's hard to tell. I think, part of the issue is the governor's proposal to switch from a state income tax to a payroll tax. Neither house is real receptive to that at this point, so that may delay decision-making, which is just another layer of complexity. But some were still optimistic that it could happen, so we should have a better idea. Both houses, at least according to their schedule, will be adopting their one-house budgets tomorrow. So once that happens, then the conference committees meet, and we'll get a better idea as to how close the houses are to each other. But it's not unlikely that it could be delayed this year. The legislative committee, really, we discussed the Albany advocacy trip. We did a recap for those that hadn't attended. That was really what the whole meeting was about. All right, that brings us to our board meeting recap. Sean?
Yes.
Board meeting recap.
Sorry, I was trying to find something. Thursday, we have the Vollmer visit at 8:15. And then our next meeting is on the 27th. We have a number of issues going back to policy. The board members are staying after tonight, remember that? So we can talk. And then I think that's it. Anything else?
The community budget forum on Thursday.
Oh, yes, community budget forum on Thursday evening.
Anything else anyone has? All right, just to the viewing public, we are really concluding the business part of this meeting. We are going to be entering into executive session to further discuss the candidates for superintendent, but that will be done as a confidential personnel matter. So at this time, I will be entertaining a motion to move into executive session, moved by Sue, seconded by Jennifer. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed, nay. All right, we will dismiss others. We're going to go in the other room and talk. Thank you very much for joining us tonight.